position.
All right, so let's get rolling. Let's talk some offense. And when you're talking offensive recruiting class, you kind of have to start at the top with the quarterback. Quarterback is usually one of the first signees in a class, and that's actually not the case this year at this point. There's some other verbal commitments up to this point. There's some other guys that are verbally committed on the offensive side of the ball. So, but quarterback needs, I would say normally it's one. And that is obviously the case this year.
Sure. And part of the reason they don't have a quarterback already is because of the pandemic.
Right.
Notre Dame likes to get guys on campus and work them out, and then they kind of pick who they want from that. Or they'll go, look at camp film or whatever. Obviously, since a lot of these kids haven't been on campus at any kind of camp, or none of them have thrown at Notre Dame's camp, as far as I know, that's kind of forced Notre Dame to be a little bit slower with its quarterback recruiting in this class. But there are some guys on the board that I like, and it's important to me in this class that not only do you get a quarterback from a number standpoint, but you need to get another talented player. And I think one of the things that Notre Dame has done in recent seasons is when they get a top quarterback, they kind of follow it up with, well, we got so-and-so, we got Brandon Wimbush. So the next year, you take an Ian Book and then an Avery Davis. You can't have those kind of stretches. You need to start doing what the big boys do, which is getting good players back to back. They've done that. Tommy Rees has done that the last 2 years. Right. Drew Pine, to me, is a good football player. Tyler Buckner, obviously, is a very good football player. You need another one. Now, for me, Steve Angeli is a guy on the list. He's from Ordell, New Jersey, Bergen Catholic, big-time East Coast college football or high school football program.
Yep, I've heard his name a lot. In connection to Notre Dame.
Yeah, big pro-style kid, 6'4 plus, 200 plus pounds, good arm, pocket guy. He's got some move the chain, mobility, but not really a runner. And he's a guy that the staff likes. He's definitely not top of my board. I think there's definitely other quarterbacks that are on the board. For me, he's sort of not on the level of quarterback you want to be the guy you choose. He's the kind of guy you get because you missed on your top couple targets. And he's still a good football player, but he's just, to me, not that same caliber yet. Now, again, the thing I like about him is he's big. He's got a good arm. It's an improving arm. It was better as a junior than it was as a sophomore, obviously. So he's a guy that I have my eye on as maybe taking that big jump as a senior. But for now, there's other guys on the board for me. Ty Simpson is a kid that Notre Dame has recently offered. Not much of a chance there. He's going to commit here in the next week or two, and it's not going to be to Notre Dame. I think he's a tad overrated, to be honest with you, Vince. He's a great high school quarterback whose skill set I don't see projecting as well to college. Like, there are things he does in high school that I just look at him and I say, I don't see that working in college. You know what I mean? And I don't think the overall skill set for Ty Simpson is really to the level that you want. And, he's a kid from Tennessee. Clemson, I think right now is the perceived leader for him amongst the recruiting services. It's not my info. That's just, you look at all the crystal balls and the future casts and all those kind of things. That seems to be the pick. But, to me, he's highly ranked, but to me, he's not a needle mover quarterback for me. A guy that I really like at quarterback, however, is Gavin Wimsett from Kentucky. Now, here's the interesting thing about Gavin Wimsett. To me, he and the next guy I'm going to talk about are the perfect quarterbacks for this class. And there's two reasons why. Number one, Gavin Wimsett is incredibly talented in my view. He's 6'3". He's from Owensboro, Kentucky. He's 6'3". He's 200 pounds. He's an athlete. He can run, but he's not a running quarterback, if you get what I'm saying. Like, there are quarterbacks who can be dynamic runners when they choose to, but they're not runners. You know what I mean? And when you watch Gavin Wimsett on film, he'll run, but a lot of times when he starts moving around in the pocket and taking off and running, he's looking to throw. I love that. I love quarterbacks whose instinct is to run and throw. And when he sees a hole and he's got to go, he'll go. I mean, he rushed for over 700 yards as a junior. So I think that fits what Notre Dame does really well. I think that fits the modern offense really well. You can still have guys who are runners first, but those are rare. I mean, Lamar Jackson is Lamar Jackson because he's a unique talent, not because it's a skill that necessarily you want to replicate. He gets away with it because he's unique. Just because Russell Wilson gets away and Kyler Murray get away with being 5'10", 5'11", doesn't mean you start actively recruiting 5'10", 5'11" quarterbacks. You get what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So I like those guys, especially with what Notre Dame does, that is an athlete that will run, but not a runner who you have to teach to pass. Does that make sense? Like kind of what?
No. It definitely makes sense. Is he a kid that was running like spread option, that kind of stuff in high school?
Yeah. I mean, they're a shotgun team. They're not, they don't do a ton of, from what I've seen, they don't do a ton of design quarterback runs. They'll do some, but they're not like running them 20 times a game.
Right.
Right. I think he ran for like 750 or so yards last year. And some of that, a good chunk of that was on scramble. So he can do that though, but he's not going to do it like the way you did it with Brandon Wimbush. Like he's not Brandon Wimbush. Well, the Notre Dame version of Brandon Wimbush.
Right.
Brandon Wimbush wasn't that version of Brandon Wimbush in high school either. They kind of turned him into that, but that's a different conversation. So the other thing about Gavin Wimsett is I'm usually against redshirting quarterbacks, especially top quarterbacks. You know that. But he's an interesting case because he's super raw. Like mechanically, you can tell he's not a kid that's just been at groomed to be a quarterback since he was 5 at quarterback camps and all this. I mean, he needs a lot of technical work. So he's the kind of guy you could bring in, redshirt him, and then put a year between him and Tyler Buckner.
Sure.
And then if Tyler Buckner's as good as we think and maybe he leaves early, then you bring this kid along. And I also think too is you want to bring in a kid that said if the light goes on for this kid, could he challenge Tyler Buckner? And with Gavin Wimsett, I think he can. Okay. And so he'll need some time, but he's a guy that to me would be much higher on my priority list than Angeli, for example. And those are the 3 offers that Notre Dame has made at the time. I expect that to expand here over the next month.
Okay. Is that because they don't think they're going to get the other guys, or
it's not that? It's just they're being really picky with the quarterback recruiting, but they're now kind of realizing that, hey, look, it doesn't look like camps are going to be opening up this summer, so now we have to explore other options. And that's why I asked Tommy Reese the question I did on signing day, and I thought he answered it masterfully, which is, look, coaches are obsessed with seeing quarterbacks throw in person, and to a degree I understand it, but I still say if I don't care what a kid does at a camp, I need to see what he does on film. And sure. I think sometimes coaches put more on workouts than they do game film. I think that can be a mistake. I think Notre Dame is trying to find a balance on that. And I think that's part of the reason that they are being patient. But they're starting to ask quarterbacks, hey, send us some workout film. Send us a practice film. Send us your guy at the gym. Send us your guy doing a bunch of agility drills so we can see the footwork and run them through a practice, almost like a pro day. I mean, that's really what it's turning into is you're having these kids record basically like pro day type workouts and you're sending it to them so you can evaluate it. So I think as they get more of that film that they can evaluate, you're going to see them start to offer more kids. It's not going to be a bunch, but in 2021, they only offered 1 quarterback, and that was Tyler Buckner. You know what I mean? So like you said, but that was because as I think a freshman, sophomore, he came to Notre Dame's camp, had a great camp, and that was their guy.
Sure.
There is 1 quarterback that I know that they're talking to and they're doing their homework on that for me, I wouldn't have offered already because his film was just that good. And that is Drew Aller from Ohio. He is 6'5", over 200 pounds. He is sort of that. Okay. Understand. I'm talking about a style of play, not a direct skill comparison, but he's sort of that Pat Mahomes era, modern Pat Mahomes player where he's a pocket passer, but he's a mobile, tough, strong kid that moves around a lot, throws on the run, can bounce off sack attempts. He can then scramble when you need him to. I think he's got a big arm, and it's only going to get stronger. And Notre Dame and a lot of other schools are now reaching out to him. He kind of had a big breakout junior year. He didn't start as a sophomore till like halfway through or end of this year. He plays at a really good school in Ohio. And so there wasn't a lot of film on him. And then, of course, he couldn't go to camps last year. Right. So I think that's why a lot of schools are late on him. Michigan just recently offered him. And then he went out and had a big junior year. So he's a kid that I really like on film, like as much as Gavin Wimsett. And I hope that they offer him soon. I hope they can have a chance with him. And I hope they offer him before Ohio State does or, Right now, Ohio
to get their
State
foot in the door a little earlier than those guys.
They're fortunate because right now Ohio State has a quarterback in the 2022 class.
Gotcha.
It's that kid. He's the number one quarterback in the country from Texas. However, Steve Sarkisian is trying to keep that kid in state. And if you're, let's just say playing at Texas is a little bit more attractive now for a quarterback than it was when Tom Herman was there.
That's fair.
And that's going to allow them to have a chance to flip the kid. Now, if they do, I would imagine this kid would be someone that Ohio State would go after.
Okay.
And so Notre Dame needs to get on him before that happens. So this is 2021 was an absolutely loaded quarterback year. And in my opinion, Notre Dame, the reason I gave Notre Dame an A grade is because they got one of the best and a guy that fit their system and fits their school and all that. So that's why they got an A. This class is not as from what I've seen so far, there's not as many elite quarterbacks in this class.
Sure.
But it's a good depth year quarterback. And so they have to try to get one of the better ones. The problem is when there's not a lot of elite guys, Notre Dame could miss on the top 4 quarterbacks in the country and still get Tyler Buchner.
Right.
If you're missing on the top 4 or 5 quarterbacks in this class, then you're
struggling.
You're going to end up with Brendan Clark.
Yeah.
Good football player, right?
But
like
not
Brendan Clark. We're going to have a show on him coming up soon, but it's not Tyler Buchner.
Yeah, right. No,
right?
absolutely. I got you.